Something just feels different about AI right now, doesn't it? It's not just another product update or a slightly better feature. So today, we're going to do a little vibe check on the whole AI space to figure out what is really going on. And that really brings us to the big question we're digging into. Have we actually just crossed some kind of invisible line? It really feels like we've hit a tipping point where the usefulness of these tools has just suddenly, and I mean dramatically, changed. And look, this isn't just some abstract feeling in the air. I mean, check this out. This quote points to a real-world example that has people buzzing. We're talking everyone, from top-tier developers to economists, realizing that some of these AI tools are now so ridiculously powerful, they're fundamentally rewriting the rules of how we work. Okay, so what's actually driving this feeling? What's the engine behind this massive shift? Well, it all comes down to this really powerful idea called cognitive offload. And trust me, this concept is the key to understanding this whole moment. Believe it or not, this term actually comes from the world of jet fighters. Think about it. Inside a cockpit, what's the one resource you absolutely cannot get more of? The pilot's attention. So the entire goal of the plane's systems is to offload all the mental heavy lifting onto the machine. That frees up the pilot to focus on the one or two critical decisions that really matter. And that right there, that's exactly what AI is starting to do for all of us. And this shows you exactly what that shift looks like in practice. Before, you were the one doing all the mental grunt work, right? The tedious research, the line-by-line coding, the data entry. But now you're becoming a manager, a supervisor. You're not the one typing every single command. You're the one telling the AI what to build. Your role is shifting from pure execution to high-level direction. Okay, so that explains the experience for one person. But how does that scale up? How does this go from being a useful tool for you or me to a massive society-changing event? How does an idea like this spread so darn fast? Well, there's this concept some people call the automation cliff. For the longest time, a new technology is kind of neat, but it's not quite reliable enough. It's a curiosity. But then it hits this invisible line, this threshold of capability, and bam, almost overnight, it goes from being a novelty to being the only way you'd ever do that thing again. And this explosion in usefulness happens in a couple of key ways. First, you've got the classic network effect. Think of cars replacing horses. Once the roads and gas stations were there, it just became the obvious, dominant choice. But then there's the second way. And with AI, this one is huge. It's the spillover effect. This is when a tool built for one job, like coding, suddenly spills over and becomes absolutely essential for an economist analyzing data or a lawyer doing research. It becomes a tool for everything. So if this change is so big and so obvious, why does it feel like we're all being caught flat-footed? Why are so many of us surprised? Well, it turns out our own brains are kind of working against us. We have this built-in blind spot that makes it really hard to see this kind of exponential change coming. It's a cognitive bias called normality bias. And what it means is our brains are hardwired to just assume that tomorrow is going to look a whole lot like today. And, most of the time that's a useful shortcut. It keeps us sane. But when you're facing a truly rapid, fundamental shift in how the world works, it makes us absolutely terrible at seeing it coming. And if you want to see normality bias in action, just look at AI in coding. Think about this. Just 1 year ago, Microsoft said 30% of its code was written by AI. That sounded huge. Then last summer, that number shot up to 50%. And today, it's totally normal for developers to have 90% of their code written by an AI. The trend was right there in plain sight, but our brains just can't process that kind of acceleration. We see the numbers, but we don't feel it until it's already in the rearview mirror. And here's the really tricky part. Even when we think we're being forward-looking, that bias just creeps right back in. You hear it all the time, right? People say, oh, the new job will be validating the AI's work. We'll all become checkers. But that's just normality bias talking again. It's taking today's problem, that the AI still needs a human check, and just assuming it'll be tomorrow's problem too. It completely misses the trajectory. Okay, so let's try to push past that bias for a second. Let's just follow the trend lines, follow the logic. Where does this all actually lead? So for coding, the path seems pretty obvious. Step 1, AI writes 90% of the code. Check. What's the next logical step? Well, the AI starts to validate the code it just wrote. And after that, it integrates the code it just validated, and then it starts scanning the entire system for bugs. You see how each step just removes another human bottleneck? Now, take that same logic and just imagine what it looks like for law or for science or for medicine. Which really brings us to the core takeaway of all this. The real challenge isn't the technology itself. It's us. It's the fact that the future is showing up way, way faster than we can change our minds about what's even possible. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. For pretty much all of modern history, human validation, a person checking the work, has been the ultimate speed limit on progress. But when an AI can reliably validate another AI, what becomes the new limiting factor? What's the next bottleneck for humanity?